The train slowed long before the map said it would. Outside the window, the landscape had already begun to change. Hills fading into wind-bent grasslands, the earth paling into sandy tones, the sky widening as if it had exhaled. Lina pressed her hand lightly to the glass. For hours, the journal had rested closed in her lap, yet she felt its presence like a quiet heartbeat. Arman noticed. He didn't speak immediately. He had learned something over the journey. Lina's silences were never empty. They were places where memories walked. Finally, he leaned forward slightly. "Is this the place?" he asked gently. Lina glanced down at the journal, then nodded. "Yes," she whispered. "The coast the journal called Where the Sea Remembers." The train came to a stop at a platform that felt more like a memory than a station. The signboard was weathered, its paint peeled by years of salt wind. Velmora Coast. There were no crowds. No vendors. Only the cry of distant seabirds, and the endless breath of waves crashing somewhere beyond the cliffs. As they stepped down, the wind greeted them like an old storyteller, tugging at coats, whispering through Lina's hair. Arman inhaled deeply. "Smells like salt and history," he murmured. Lina smiled faintly. "That's exactly what it feels like." Beyond the station lay a narrow descending path carved into the cliffs. The sea was not visible yet, but it could be heard. A deep, rhythmic thunder, like a giant heart beating beneath the world. They began walking. The path twisted between jagged rocks and tall grass that swayed like waves of green. Halfway down, Lina paused. She opened the journal. Pages fluttered violently in the wind, until one stopped, as if held by unseen fingers. A sketch filled the paper. A lighthouse. Tall. Solitary. Standing on a rock separated from the mainland by a thin strip of land. Arman leaned closer. "That's here," he asked. Lina scanned the horizon. And then she saw it. It rose from the sea like a forgotten guardian. Weather-worn. Silent. Yet unbroken. The glass at its crown caught the sunlight, sending a faint golden reflection across the water. Lina's voice softened. "The journal says this lighthouse hasn't had a keeper in decades." Arman folded his arms. "Then why does it feel like someone's still watching from it?" Lina didn't answer. Because she felt it too. They reached the coastal village by noon. Or what remained of it. Stone houses leaned under the weight of time. Wooden shutters creaked in the wind. Fishing nets hung like abandoned webs between poles. Yet signs of life remained, smoke from one chimney, a bicycle resting near a well, laundry fluttering on a line. An old fisherman sat near the shore repairing a net. He looked up as they approached, eyes sharp despite his age. "Travelers?" he asked. Arman nodded politely. "Yes, sir. We're following an old map." The fisherman's hands stopped moving. His gaze shifted to the journal in Lina's arms. His expression changed. Not fear. Recognition. "That book," he said slowly. "Where did you find it?" Lina hesitated, then answered honestly. "It belonged to someone who traveled these places long ago." The fisherman nodded faintly. Then you've come for the lighthouse." Arman and Lina exchanged a glance. "You know about it?" Arman asked. The fisherman stood carefully. "The sea keeps memories," he said. "But that lighthouse, it keeps secrets." Wind howled between the houses as if punctuating his words. He pointed toward the distant structure. "Years ago, its keeper vanished. No body. No boat missing. Just, gone." Lina's grip on the journal tightened. "The journal mentions him," she said quietly. "It calls him the last light." The fisherman's eyes widened slightly. "Then the journal knows more than the village does." He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "If you go before sunset." Arman frowned. "Why?" The fisherman looked toward the sea. "Because after dark, the light returns." Silence fell. Only the waves answered. By late afternoon, they began the walk toward the narrow land strip leading to the lighthouse. The tide was low, exposing jagged rocks and tide pools reflecting the sky. Seabirds circled overhead. The wind had grown colder. Halfway across, Lina stopped again. She opened the journal. New ink had appeared. Not written, but revealed by moisture in the air. Words slowly darkened on the page. When the light returns, the truth surfaces. Arman read over her shoulder. That's not ominous at all, he muttered softly. Lina closed the journal. We've come this far. He nodded. Together. The lighthouse door stood partially open. Rust clung to its hinges. Wind pushed it gently, causing a slow, echoing creak. Inside, shadows spiraled upward along the circular staircase. Lina stepped in first. Arman followed. The air smelled of salt, oil, and something older. Memories. On the wall hung faded photographs. One showed the lighthouse keeper, a tall man with kind eyes, standing beside the very journal Lina held. Her breath caught. He had the journal before us. Arman studied the photo. Then whatever happened to him is tied to this map. Footsteps echoed as they climbed higher. Step by step. Toward the lantern room. Toward the truth. As they reached the top, the lantern glass glowed faintly. Not bright. Not fully lit. But alive. Lina whispered. It's beginning. Outside, the sun dipped toward the horizon, and the sea below began to roar louder, as if awakening. The lantern room breathed with light. Not steady, not mechanical. Alive. A faint golden glow pulsed inside the glass chamber, brightening, dimming, like a heartbeat made of fire. Lina stepped closer slowly. Her reflection shimmered across the curved glass panels, overlapping with the moving light within. It shouldn't be working, Arman said quietly, scanning the rusted gears beneath the lantern. There's no fuel, no wiring, nothing connected. The glow brightened. For a brief moment, it illuminated the entire chamber, revealing dust suspended in the air like frozen stars. Lina opened the journal instinctively. The pages began turning on their own. The pages stopped on an entry written in hurried ink. But the handwriting was uneven, as if written during trembling fear or urgency. Lina read aloud. The light does not guide ships. It guides memories. And tonight, it has begun again. Arman frowned. Memories. What does that even mean? Before Lina could answer, the lantern flared brighter. The glass around them shimmered, like water disturbed by wind. And suddenly, the room was no longer empty. Figures. Faint, translucent, made of light and mist. They moved slowly, repeating silent actions. A man polishing the lantern glass. A woman writing at a desk. A child looking out toward the sea. Lina gasped softly. They're echoes. Arman stepped closer to one figure, his hand passing through it like fog. Not ghosts, he murmured. Memories, replaying. The journal glowed faintly in Lina's hands, as if recognizing the moment. Then one figure appeared clearer than the others. The lighthouse keeper. The same man from the photograph. He stood beside the lantern, writing frantically in a logbook. Lina stepped closer, drawn by something deeper than curiosity. The echo replayed silently at first. Then sound began bleeding into the moment, faint, distorted, like voices underwater. If anyone finds this, the journal must not be completed. Arman's eyes widened. Completed. Completed how? The keeper's echo continued writing, faster, more desperate. Lina flipped through her journal rapidly, searching. Near the final pages, she found missing sections. Torn. Removed. Her voice trembled slightly. Someone took pages out. Arman looked back at the echo. Or he removed them himself. The keeper suddenly stopped writing. Slowly, he turned. And for the first time, the echo looked directly at Lina. Lina froze. Her breath caught in her throat. He can see me, she whispered. The echo stepped forward, movements no longer looped, no longer distant. Intentional. He raised his hand slowly, pointing toward the journal. Then toward the sea beyond the glass. And spoke, clearer now. The map does not lead forward. It leads back. The lantern exploded with light. The echoes vanished instantly. The room fell silent again. Only the steady glow of the lantern remained, Softer now, calmer. Arman exhaled slowly. Okay. I officially believe this journal is more than a map. Lina stepped toward the logbook the keeper had been writing in. This one was real. Physical. Covered in dust. She opened it carefully. Most entries were routine. Weather logs. Ship sightings. Maintenance notes. Until the final pages. The handwriting changed, mirroring the urgency they had just seen. Lina read quietly. The journal reveals places where love was lost. Promises broken. Journeys unfinished. The light forces us to face what we buried. Arman looked at her. That's what we've been doing every place we visit. She nodded slowly. Travel wasn't random. It was emotional excavation. Then Lina turned the final page. A map fragment was sketched there. Different from their journal. But connected. At the top, one phrase was written. The sea keeps what hearts cannot. Arman studied the sketch. It points offshore, beyond the lighthouse. Lina stepped toward the lantern glass, looking out. Far beyond the crashing waves. A faint structure rose from the water. Ruins. Half submerged. Hidden by mist. Her voice softened. That's our next destination. Arman followed her gaze. And judging by the journal. It's going to be personal, he finished. As they turned to leave, the lantern pulsed once more. But this time, warmer. Gentler. Not warning them. Guiding them. Outside, the tide had begun to rise, waves swallowing the narrow path back to shore. Time was moving. And the sea was waiting. The morning mist had not yet lifted from Lake Ellerin. A silver veil hovered above the still water, turning the entire valley into a dream suspended between night and day. The mountains stood quiet, watchful, as if they had been waiting centuries for this very moment. Arman, Lina, and Elder Rowan stood at the edge of the lake. Between them lay the artifact, the wind compass, now glowing brighter than ever before. It pulsed softly, as if responding to something beneath the water. Something ancient. Something awake. Lina stepped forward slowly. Her reflection shimmered on the lake's surface, but it didn't move exactly with her. It lagged, just slightly. She frowned. Did you see that? She whispered. Arman moved beside her. The compass vibrated faintly in his hands. Then, suddenly, its needle spun wildly. Not pointing north. Pointing downward. Toward the lake. Elder Rowan's expression darkened. I was afraid of this, he murmured. Lina looked at him. Afraid of what? Rowan stepped closer to the water's edge, his reflection steady, unlike Lina's. There is a second map, he said quietly. One that cannot be drawn on paper. Arman's grip tightened on the compass. Where is it? Rowan raised his hand slowly and pointed to the lake. Beneath. The water shimmered. Then shifted. As if the lake itself were breathing. Lines of light formed beneath the surface, intersecting, circling, creating the outline of a hidden map. Lina gasped softly. It's moving. Rowan nodded. It only reveals itself when the compass awakens. Arman stared, mesmerized. The glowing lines formed valleys, mountains, pathways. And at the very center, a symbol shaped like a storm spiral. But then, the spiral symbol pulsed violently. The lake trembled. Wind rushed across the valley without warning. Lina stepped back. That doesn't look like a path. Rowan's voice lowered. It isn't. Arman looked at him sharply. It's a seal. Silence fell. A seal, for what? Lina asked. Rowan's eyes remained fixed on the spiral. For something that must never rise again. Wind howled suddenly across the lake. The compass flared with blinding light. Arman's vision shattered into fragments. He saw flames, falling towers, a storm swallowing the sky. And at the center of it all, a shadow made of wind and darkness. Arman staggered back, breathing hard. I've seen this before. Lina rushed to steady him. What did you see? He hesitated. Not a place, a disaster. Rowan closed his eyes briefly. The storm sovereign, he whispered. Lina blinked. That's not a myth. Rowan shook his head slowly. No myth. A prison. Rowan turned toward them fully now. Long ago, when the wind still obeyed human will, there was one who sought to command all storms. Arman listened intently. He nearly succeeded, Rowan continued, until the Guardians sealed him beneath Lake Ellerin. Lina's voice trembled. And the map leads to the seal. Silence thickened. Rising tension. Suddenly, the compass needle snapped still, pointing directly at the spiral symbol. The lake erupted in ripples. Wind spiraled downward into the water like a funnel. Lina grabbed Arman's arm. Something's happening. From the center of the spiral, a beam of light shot upward. It struck the sky, then split into 3 directions. One beam pointed toward the northern glacier, one toward the desert ruins, and the third, toward the forest they had just left. Arman's eyes widened. It's not just a seal. Rowan nodded grimly. It's breaking. Lina stepped forward despite the wind. Then we have to stop it. Rowan hesitated. You don't understand. If the seal fails. Arman finished the sentence quietly. The storms return. Rowan looked at him. Not storms. Judgment. Emotional beat. For a moment, no one spoke. The weight of destiny pressed heavily around them. Lina looked at Arman, not with fear, but trust. We started this journey to find truth, she said softly. Arman met her gaze. And now the truth needs us. He turned to Rowan. What do we do? Rowan stepped closer to the compass. The map beneath the lake reveals 3 keys, he said. He pointed to each beam of light. The glacier key, buried in frozen time. The ember key, hidden in desert fire. And the verdant key, guarded by the forest itself. Lina whispered. 3 paths. Arman nodded. 1 choice. Rowan looked at him carefully. No. 3 journeys. The realization struck them all at once. To restore the seal, they would have to divide. Lina's voice lowered. We can't split up now. Arman didn't answer immediately. His eyes remained on the map. On the spiral. On the storm waiting beneath it. Cliffhanger build. Then, the water surged violently. A shadow moved beneath the glowing lines. Huge. Alive. Watching them. Lina stepped back in shock. Rowan. His face went pale. It's already aware of you. The compass cracked with a sharp sound. A fracture of light split across its surface. Wind exploded outward. And from beneath Lake Ellerin, a deep, thunderous roar echoed through the mountains. Not fully free, but no longer fully bound. Arman tightened his grip on the failing compass. Lina stood beside him, unflinching. And Rowan whispered the words that changed everything. The seal will fall, unless the 3 keys are found. The beams of light burned across the horizon. 3 journeys had begun. And the storm had awakened. The northern winds howled like ancient voices. By midday, the warmth of Lake Ellerin felt like a distant memory. Snow replaced grass. Ice replaced stone. And the sky turned pale as glass. Arman and Lina traveled with Rowan along a narrow ridge that carved through the mountains like a blade. Below them, endless white. Above them, gathering storm clouds. The first beam of light still glowed faintly in the distance, guiding them toward the glacier key. Lina pulled her cloak tighter. I thought deserts were harsh, she said, breath visible in the air. Rowan replied calmly. The desert tests the body. The glacier tests memory. Arman glanced at him. Memory. Rowan nodded. This place does not freeze time. It preserves it. As they descended into the glacier valley, shapes began appearing beneath the ice. Not rocks. Not shadows. Figures. Frozen mid-motion. Travelers from another age. Warriors. Scholars. Explorers. All preserved beneath layers of crystal ice. Lina slowed, unsettled. They look alive. Rowan's voice softened. They were seekers of the keys. Arman stopped walking. One figure beneath the ice caught his attention. A young guardian, clutching a broken compass. He knelt instinctively. The wind compass in his hand pulsed in response. Then, a sudden flash of light. Snowstorms. A battle against living wind. Guardians falling one by one. And the glacier sealing them where they stood. Arman gasped as the vision ended. They didn't fail. Rowan shook his head. No. They sacrificed themselves to keep the key hidden. Lina looked ahead. Hidden from who? A distant rumble answered her question. Rising threat. The glacier trembled. Cracks spread across the ice like lightning. Snow cascaded from towering frozen cliffs. Rowan's voice turned urgent. We are not alone. From the heart of the glacier, a shape emerged. Towering. Forged of ice and storm. Eyes glowing pale blue. The glacier sentinel. Guardian of the first key. Lina stepped back, awestruck. It's beautiful. The sentinel moved. Each step thundered across the ice. And terrifying, she finished. Rowan bowed his head slightly. It does not attack unless challenged. Arman stepped forward. Compass in hand. We're not here to challenge. We're here to awaken the key. The sentinel's gaze locked onto the compass. It raised one massive arm. Ice shifted beneath their feet. Then, the glacier floor opened. A staircase of crystal ice descended into glowing depths. Rowan exhaled slowly. It grants passage. The inner glacier temple. Deep beneath the ice. They found it. A temple not built, but grown. Columns of frozen light stretched upward like captured lightning. At the center hovered the first key. Encased in rotating ice rings. Shaped like a crystalline snowflake, burning with inner wind. Lina whispered in awe. It's alive. Rowan nodded. All keys are. Arman stepped toward it. The compass resonated violently. But as he reached out, the ice rings froze solid. A voice echoed through the chamber. Not spoken. Remembered. Trial of memory. Only one who honors the past may carry the future. Visions flooded the chamber walls. Failures. Losses. Regrets. Arman saw every moment he had doubted himself. Every life he couldn't save. He fell to one knee. Lina stepped forward instinctively. But Rowan stopped her gently. This trial is his alone. Arman looked up at the key. Voice unsteady but resolute. I cannot change the past. The vision stilled. But I can protect what remains. Silence. Then, the ice rings shattered into snow. The moment he touched it, the glacier roared. Light surged through every frozen wall. Above the surface, the sentinel bowed. The first key had chosen its bearer. But far away, beneath Lake Ellerin, the spiral seal cracked deeper. As they emerged from the glacier temple, the northern beam of light faded. One path complete. Two remained. Rowan looked toward the burning southern horizon. The desert awaits. Lina exhaled slowly. No more turning back, is there? Arman closed his hand around the glacier key. The compass, though cracked, glowed stronger again. No, he said. Now the storm knows we're coming. Snow began to fall harder. And in the distance, thunder answered. The cold of the glacier faded behind them. But the world did not grow gentler. It grew harsher. Days later, snow gave way to stone. Stone gave way to sand. And sand, to fire. The southern horizon burned gold beneath a relentless sun. Before them stretched the desert of ember winds, a place where heat bent the air and storms carried sparks instead of snow. Rowan stopped at the final ridge overlooking the desert basin. This land, he said quietly, tests the heart. Lina shielded her eyes. It looks alive. As if answering her, a wave of heated wind surged across the dunes, carrying glowing embers like drifting fireflies. Arman tightened his grip on the glacier key. It pulsed, reacting to the desert's heat. Rowan nodded. The keys awaken one another. Journey into the dunes. They descended into the desert at dusk. Traveling by day was impossible. The sand itself radiated heat like iron from a forge. At night, however, the desert transformed. The embers cooled into glowing dust. The sky filled with unfamiliar constellations. And the wind began to whisper. Lina walked beside Arman in the quiet glow. "You've changed," she said softly. He glanced at her. "How?" "You carry the key differently than you carried the compass." Arman thought for a moment. "The compass showed me where to go." He looked at the key. "This shows me what I must protect." Lina smiled gently. Romance, quiet, unspoken, deepened between them. The desert illusion. By the third night, the desert began testing them. Shapes appeared on the horizon. Oases. Cities. Loved ones long gone. Rowan warned them. Do not follow what calls your past. But the visions felt real. Too real. Lina's trial. One vision stepped closer than the rest. A small seaside home. Wind chimes ringing. Lina froze. Her childhood home. She walked toward it unconsciously. Arman noticed too late. "Lina, wait." As her fingers touched the illusion, the house burned into ash. The desert roared violently. Rowan pulled her back just as the sand collapsed beneath her feet. "The desert feeds on longing," he said firmly. Lina steadied herself. Tears in her eyes, but resolve stronger now. "I won't follow ghosts again." Arrival at the Ember Temple. At dawn on the 5th day, they found it. Half buried beneath molten glass dunes. The Temple of Ember Winds. Its structure looked forged from cooled lava and sunfire. At its peak burned an eternal flame that did not consume its fuel. The glacier key reacted instantly. Frost met fire. Steam spiraled around Arman's hand. Rowan spoke. "The second key lies within." But fire does not test strength. It tests truth. Temple interior. Inside, the air shimmered like a furnace. Walls glowed with moving flames that formed living memories. Not illusions this time. Truths. Regrets. Choices. Arman's fire trial. A ring of fire rose around Arman. The glacier key floated from his hand. A voice echoed. "What burns within you?" Visions appeared. Moments he chose duty over love. Moments he walked away to protect others. He looked at Lina through the flames. Fear flickered in his eyes. The fire intensified. To claim the key, he had to speak his truth. Not as a guardian. As a man. "I am afraid," he admitted. The flames softened. "Afraid of losing those I protect." He looked directly at Lina. "But I would still choose this path, if it keeps them safe." The fire parted. The Ember Key appears. At the temple's core hovered the second key. A blazing crystal shaped like a burning feather. It pulsed like a heartbeat. Fire, yet gentle. Destructive, yet protective. Key bonding moment. As Arman reached for it, Lina placed her hand over his. Not stopping him. Standing with him. Fire and frost energies merged. Balance formed. The Ember Key descended into his grasp. Above the temple, a second beam of light erupted into the sky. Two keys awakened. But deep within the earth, the storm entity stirred again. Stronger now. Closer. Rowan looked toward the distant emerald horizon. The final key waits in the living forest. Arman nodded. Frost in one hand. Fire in the other. The storm rises. Lina finished quietly. Then we rise faster. Ember winds howled across the dunes as they departed. From fire, they entered life. The desert's heat slowly faded behind them, replaced by rising mist and the scent of rain-soaked earth. The land changed gradually at first. Dry dunes softened into cracked soil. Cracked soil gave way to moss. And moss to roots thick as ancient walls. Before them stretched the verdant expanse, the last untouched forest of the southern continent. A place where maps refused to remain accurate. Because the forest itself was alive. Lina stepped forward first this time. After glacier trials and desert fire, the forest felt like breathing again. It feels welcoming, she whispered. Rowan did not share her comfort. Do not mistake stillness for safety. He knelt, touching the roots. They are listening. The forest moves. As they walked deeper, the path behind them sealed with vines. Branches bent subtly, guiding them, testing them. Arman held both keys now. Glacier frost in one hand, ember fire in the other. The forest reacted to their presence. Leaves shimmered between blue frost and warm gold light. The forest recognizes balance, Rowan said. Fire, ice, opposites, held in harmony. Lina looked ahead. Then what does it want from us? Rowan's voice lowered. The truth of the heart. The whispering canopy. The deeper they traveled, the forest began to speak. Not in language, but in memory. Laughter echoed faintly. Footsteps of travelers long gone. Moments of kindness, and moments of regret. Each step stirred emotional echoes. Lina's emotional reflection. One memory paused before Lina. A moment from early in their journey, when she almost chose to walk alone. She watched her past self hesitate. Watched Arman offer quiet companionship. She smiled softly. I'm glad I didn't walk away. Arman heard her. I am too. A small moment, but deeply rooted. The guardian of the final key. The forest suddenly fell silent. No wind. No whispers. Ahead stood a colossal tree, larger than a fortress. Its trunk spiraled upward like a living tower. At its center glowed a heart of emerald light. Rowan stopped. The world root. From its bark emerged a guardian. Not beast. Not spirit. But a being formed of vines, bark, and luminous sap. Eyes glowing soft green. Voice deep as earth itself. Who carries frost and flame into the heart of life? Trial of harmony. Arman stepped forward. I do. The guardian studied him. You carry power, but power alone cannot hold life together. The ground split gently, revealing the verdant key suspended in a sphere of living light. But as Arman approached, frost surged. Fire flared. The energies clashed violently. The forest recoiled. Rowan realized first. You cannot take life, while divided. Arman struggled to stabilize the keys. The guardian turned to Lina. Balance is not carried alone. She stepped beside him. Without hesitation. Without fear. Harmony moment. As Lina touched the keys, the chaos calmed. Her presence steadied the energies. Not power, but emotional balance. Trust. Connection. The guardian spoke. Life grows where hearts stand together. The verdant key awakens. The emerald sphere opened like a blooming flower. Inside hovered the final key. Shaped like a leaf forged from crystal and light. It pulsed with life energy. Not hot. Not cold. Alive. Key bonding. Arman and Lina reached together. This time not guided by trial, but by unity. Frost. Fire. Life. All three keys aligned. Energy surged skyward in a tricolored beam. The forest roared, not in anger, but in awakening. Storm foreshadowing. Far beyond the forest canopy, storm clouds twisted violently. The ancient entity sensed the awakening. Lightning cracked across the horizon. Closer now. Awake now. Hunting the keys. The guardian stepped back into the world root. You now carry balance. But balance invites opposition. Rowan looked toward the storm. The final convergence approaches. Arman closed his hand around the three keys. We're ready. Lina stood beside him. Together. The forest parted, revealing the path toward their final trial. The storm did not arrive. It awakened. Clouds gathered in spirals, not drifting, but circling. Like vultures above something dying. The sea below churned violently, waves striking the cliffs in uneven rhythms, as if responding to a pulse. Arman stood near the cliff's edge, the verdant key warm in his palm. It glowed faintly, reacting. Behind him, Lina stepped closer, her journal clutched tightly against her chest. "Is it coming for us?" she whispered. Arman didn't answer immediately. Because deep down, he knew it was. Herb the keys react. They placed the keys together inside the abandoned lighthouse keeper's quarters. The reaction was immediate. The verdant key pulsed in emerald light. The tidal key shimmered in deep blue. The ember key glowed like breathing fire. But instead of harmonizing, they flickered chaotically, like instruments out of tune. Lina stepped back. "They're afraid." Arman looked at her. "Or warning us." Outside, lightning struck the sea. This time, thunder followed. Candle hash the journal reveals a warning. Lina turned back to the lighthouse journal. Pages she hadn't read yet began turning on their own. The ink on one page glowed faintly, activated by the key's presence. She read aloud. "When 3 awaken, the sky will remember. The balance keeper will rise, not to guide, but to test. Bearers must stand united, or be reclaimed." Arman frowned. Reclaimed? Before she could respond, the lighthouse trembled. Dust fell from the ceiling beams. And from the ocean, a column of storm rose upward like a living wall. Water wave the entity forms. It wasn't just weather. It was presence. A towering shape formed within the cyclone, vast shoulders of thundercloud, arms of spiraling wind, lightning threading through its core like veins. It had no face. Yet it watched. The sea recoiled beneath it. The cliffs vibrated. And slowly, it turned toward the lighthouse. Toward the keys. Toward them. Lina's breath caught. "It knows." Arman stepped in front of her instinctively. The verdant key burned hot in his hand. Runner escape from the lighthouse. The lighthouse shook violently now. Wood splintered. Glass shattered inward as wind forced itself inside. "Move!" Arman shouted. They ran down the spiral staircase, footsteps echoing against stone walls vibrating with each thunder strike. Halfway down, the stairwell window exploded inward. Wind roared through like a living scream. Lina stumbled, Arman caught her hand. For a moment, they didn't let go. Not out of fear. Out of certainty. They would face this together. Rain cloud hashed the village under siege. Outside, the forgotten coast was unrecognizable. Rain didn't fall, it attacked. Wind tore through alleys, lifting sand and debris into spiraling funnels. Doors slammed open and shut. Old signboards snapped loose. The storm entity loomed closer, its lower form stretching toward land. Like fingers reaching. The keys pulsed violently now. Resonating, reacting, resisting. Fire Lina's emotional breakthrough. For months, Lina had been running from pain. From loss. From love she thought she'd never feel again. But standing in that storm, watching Arman stand between her and the impossible, something shifted. "This isn't just about the keys," she said. He looked back. "It's testing us, isn't it?" The wind howled louder, as if responding. Arman nodded slowly. "Unity," he said. "That's what the journal meant." She stepped beside him, not behind. "Then we stand together." High voltage sign first confrontation. They held the keys outward. Emerald. Blue. Ember. The storm entity paused. Lightning arced toward them. But stopped mid-air. The keys emitted a harmonic pulse. Not fighting. Balancing. Wind circled them, violently at first. Then slower. Testing. Measuring. Judging. Milky Way shared memory vision. The world dissolved. They stood somewhere else now. Inside the storm itself. Ruins floated around them, fragments of ancient temples, broken pillars, drifting symbols of the elements. A voice echoed, not heard, but felt. "Bearers of balance. Do you stand as one, or as fragments?" Arman looked at Lina. Lina looked at Arman. No hesitation now. Their hands found each other. Steady. Certain. Herb passing the test. The keys harmonized. Colors blended. Storm winds softened. The voice spoke again. "Unity restores what power divides. You may pass. Bearers. The vision shattered. Sun with small cloud hash storm withdrawal. They were back on the shore. Rain slowed. Wind gentled. The towering storm entity unraveled into mist, dissolving back into sky. Not defeated. Satisfied. Testing complete. The sea calmed. And for the first time since arriving, silence returned. Red Heart hash quiet after the storm. They didn't speak. Didn't move. Hands still held. Not out of fear now, but connection. Lina exhaled softly. We passed. Arman nodded. Together. And neither let go right away. Transition to next mystery. Back inside the lighthouse ruins. The map changed again. A new symbol ignited far inland. Beyond forests. Beyond mountains. Where storm met stone. Lina traced it with her finger. Another key. Arman packed their belongings. Then we keep going. She looked at him, softer now. Not strangers anymore. Not just travelers. Partners in something larger. The storm had not tried to destroy them. It had tried to divide them. And when it failed, it let them pass. But ahead, greater tests waited. Not of strength, but of heart. By dawn, they had left the storm behind. The path inland was steep, winding through cliffs where the ocean's roar slowly faded into distant memory. Hours passed before the land changed. Forests thinned. Grass vanished. Stone took over. They stepped onto a vast plateau, a landscape carved not by erosion, but in tension. Massive rock pillars rose from the earth in spirals and arches, each etched with faint glowing markings. Lina slowed her steps. This place isn't natural. Arman nodded quietly. No, it was built. Each pillar carried carvings. Flames spiraled around one. Waves encircled another. Vines climbed a third. Lightning crowned the tallest. The elements. Not worshipped. Remembered. Lina ran her fingers across the engravings. The stone pulsed faintly at her touch. They knew the keys, she whispered. Arman studied the layout from above. They didn't just know them. They built this place for them. At the center stood something far older than the pillars. A monolith. Towering. Split cleanly from top to base, as if struck by divine force. Inside the fracture, light glowed. Not bright, but ancient. Calling. Lina felt the keys stir inside her satchel. They want us to go there. As they approached, the keys rose on their own, hovering between them. Light threads connected the keys to the monolith's carvings. Symbols long dormant ignited across the stone surface. The plateau trembled, not violently, but awakening, like memory returning after centuries of silence. The carvings began to move, not physically, but through light. Figures emerged in glowing outlines. 5 guardians stood carved into the stone. Each held a key. But unlike Arman and Lina, they stood apart, separated by carved fractures between them. Lina frowned. They weren't united. The light dimmed around the divided figures, then brightened where 2 stood side by side. She looked at Arman. The storm was showing us this. The world dissolved again. But this time, they were not observers. They stood inside the past. A great temple rose where the plateau now lay broken. 5 bearers stood in ceremonial formation, holding the original keys. The sky churned with elemental power, firestorms, tidal waves, lightning arcs, and forests rising unnaturally fast. A convergence. A ritual meant to balance the world. But something went wrong. Two guardians stepped forward, disagreeing on how the keys should be used. One believed balance required unity. The other believed power required control. The temple shook as their keys flared against one another. The remaining guardians hesitated. And that hesitation fractured everything. Energy spiraled out of control. The elements collided violently. And from that chaos, a being was born. Not evil. Not good. But absolute. The Balance Keeper. A living embodiment of elemental equilibrium. It descended upon the temple. Not to destroy, but to judge. Unable to stand united. The guardians failed the judgment. The temple collapsed inward. Energy crystallized into the monolith. The keys scattered across the world. Hidden. Waiting. For future bearers. Who would either restore balance. Or repeat the fracture. The vision faded. Silence returned to the plateau. Lina steadied herself against the stone. They failed because they stood divided. Arman looked at the fracture running through the monolith. And the world has been unstable ever since. The keys dimmed. But did not go still. More remained. More to gather. More to test them. Lina's voice softened. If we ever reach that final convergence. She hesitated. What if we fail to? Arman didn't answer immediately. Instead, he stepped closer. Not dramatically. Naturally. We won't. She searched his face. How do you know? Because they carried keys. He gently lifted her hand. But we carry each other. For a moment. The plateau felt warmer. Light surged once more through the fracture. A projection formed in midair. A mountain range. Jagged. Snow-crowned. At its peak. A fourth symbol ignited. Lightning intertwined with stone. Lina whispered. The Storm Key. Arman nodded. And the Balance Keeper will be watching. The past had revealed its warning. Power without unity fractures the world. And as the next path rose before them, so did the weight of what they carried. Not just keys, but the fate of balance itself. The map did not unfold. It breathed. Lines shifted slowly, like veins beneath skin. Rivers redrew their paths. Forests retreated. And then, the mountains rose. Jagged lines burned into the parchment, forming a range taller and harsher than any before. At its center, a symbol pulsed. Sharp. Angular. Alive. Lina leaned closer. It wasn't there before. Arman traced the outline with his finger. The map is responding to us, and to the keys. The parchment glowed brighter. Light lifted from its surface, shaping the image of a vast mountain range suspended in the air. Peaks pierced the clouds like spears. Storms circled endlessly at their summits, never breaking, never moving on. Lina swallowed. That's where the Storm Key is. Arman nodded slowly. And where the Balance Keeper will test us again. The illusion faded. But the weight of it remained. The plateau answered the revelation. Wind rolled through the stone field like a low breath. The pillars hummed, not loudly, but in agreement. This path had been walked before. And failed. Lina looked around. All of this, It's a warning, isn't it? Arman answered quietly. It's a reminder. They rested at the edge of the expanse. No urgency. No command from the keys. Just choice. Lina hugged her knees. The Guardians didn't fail because they were weak. She looked at him. They failed because they stopped listening to each other. Arman nodded. The keys don't force us forward. He met her gaze. They're waiting to see if we choose to walk together. She smiled faintly. Then let's choose. They prepared in silence. Not strained. Comfortable. Cloaks tightened. Supplies checked. The keys were wrapped carefully, not hidden, but respected. The map was folded with reverence. Each movement felt deliberate. Like ritual. Like acknowledgement of what lay ahead. They did not look back at the monolith. Some truths were not meant to be revisited. Ahead, the land sloped upward into rugged terrain. The path narrowed. Stone replaced soil. Wind sharpened. The storm spire range waited. The storm did not greet them with thunder. It whispered first. Static danced across stone. Hair lifted slightly in the air. The verdant key warmed. The tidal key vibrated. The ember key pulsed slowly. Lina felt it. We're being measured again. Arman tightened his grip on the pack. We always are. They stopped at the mountain's threshold. Above them, storm clouds rolled endlessly, folding into themselves. Below, the land they had crossed lay calm and distant. Between, uncertainty. Lina took a slow breath. If we turn back now. Arman shook his head gently. We don't lose anything. She smiled. And if we go forward? He looked up at the storm. We gain the truth. No vows were spoken. No promises declared. Just a quiet understanding. Whatever awaited them above, they would face it together. They stepped onto the mountain path. The map had changed. The past had spoken. And now, the storm would decide. If unity was enough.